It's a beautiful day out. Actually, it's blazing hot. And you, my friend, want to get some ice cream. So you walk to the ice cream market and oh my god, what are these prices? $10 for one scoop and the line is so big. What is going on, you ask yourself? Well, what you just witnessed, my friend, is the concept of market equilibrium in action. So you want to learn more about it? Well, you've come to the right place. In the last part, we looked at demand and supply, how these curves function on a typical demand and supply graph, and the specific determinants that can lead to increases or decreases in their curves. Well, the only thing we didn't do in that video, as you might have noticed, is we didn't put them together. What happens when we put them together? Well, market equilibrium happens. Putting the supply and demand curves together for, let's say in this case, our beloved ice cream, we can see that the graphs naturally create a point here, where they intersect. This is the point at which there is equilibrium, or market equilibrium. Ooh. Market equilibrium, simply put, is a point in which the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded. Everything is perfect in this world. The temperature is pleasant, the sky is blue, and it's summer, and the ice cream sellers know exactly the amount of ice cream they need to make to fulfill the exact amount that customers will want. The market is in equilibrium. The ice cream sellers charge a price they're content with, and the customers are also content with the price they charge. $5 for a scoop of ice cream seems fair enough for both sides. Now, let's say the temperature drops and it becomes like freezing cold, 10 feet of snow falls. Well, as you guessed it, no one wants to buy ice cream except James because he's James. Anyways, the demand curve shifts leftward and brings with it a decrease in equilibrium quantity and equilibrium price. Because now sellers have too much ice cream stock on their hands, it leads to a market surplus. There's simply too much ice cream, and because very little people want ice cream during a blizzard, the price of ice cream falls. Sellers realizing this try to reduce the quantity they supply as the equilibrium quantity also drops, but it's not possible. There's simply too much ice cream. This leads to a surplus in the market. There's too much ice cream in the market and goes above the quantity that is demanded. Basically the difference between the lines above the equilibrium point here. And naturally the market self-corrects for this disequilibrium by reducing the price of ice cream to fit the existing demand. So yeah, James is getting that ice cream for a very, very cheap price. So far, we looked at what happens when demand is affected, when consumers are willing or not willing to buy ice cream depending on the situation. But what happens when supply is affected? Let's say one of the trucks transporting all the ice cream to the town suddenly breaks down and the town has less ice cream for that day. But it's a hot day. Naturally, the supply curve will shift to the left as there is decreased supply, leading to a decreased equilibrium quantity along with the equilibrium price increasing. Naturally, consumers realizing the high prices want to buy less ice cream, so the quantity demanded decreases. But it's still a hot day, and demand is still strong for the amount of ice cream that's in the market. Naturally, consumers realizing the higher prices want to buy less ice cream, so the quantity demanded decreases. So the market, like always, corrects for this disequilibrium with higher prices. There's now a shortage in the market when you look at the amount of supply that was unfortunately reduced. Now let's say the next day the town sees not the 5 trucks of ice cream that are usually delivered, but 10 trucks. It seems that ice cream sellers accidentally ordered too much ice cream thinking it was going to be hot, but now it's cold. And now the supply curve shifts to the right because the supply has increased. And with that, the equilibrium quantity and the equilibrium price drop. There's a surplus in the market because the ice cream sellers have way too much ice cream and not enough consumer demand. The market naturally corrects for this by reducing the price of ice cream to get more consumers to buy it. Oh boy, that was a rough time, you might think. But there's more. What happens when the demand and supply curve shift simultaneously? Well, that can be a bit tricky. Let's say the quiet town we're in suddenly becomes touristy, but at the same time there are more suppliers. Well, equilibrium is still maintained. Supply and demand increase at the same time, so everything is in harmony. Because it's cold and the ice cream sellers buy less in preparation for the less demand they expect to see. But there are still a lot of tourists because everyone is more like James. In that case, the demand supply will go in opposite directions. Demand will go to the right and supply goes to the left, producing a double movement. But you have to be careful with these kinds of problems. In most cases, one of the equilibrium effects is quite clear, while the other can be indeterminate. In this case, we can clearly see that price increases because it receded further and further with movements in both supply and demand. But quantity, it's ambiguous and therefore it's indeterminate. It could go either up or down, and we leave it at that. So far, we've been looking at ice cream alone, but simply anything in the world that people want to purchase has market equilibrium forces behind them. They can also be affected by a number of different shifters in demand and supply, which you can learn more about in my demand and supply video here. Now, let's do our quick summary. Remember that market equilibrium combines both the supply and demand curve at the point at which they intersect, which is known as the equilibrium point. In equilibrium, the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied, producing a fair price for both consumers and sellers. This equilibrium can be caused by shifts in either the demand and supply curve, either causing a shortage or a surplus in the market. This, in turn, affects the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity as the market adjusts to these forces. Simultaneous shifts can occur, and there's usually one factor that is clearly in reduction or increase, and another one that is usually ambiguous. For these, use the equilibrium point itself to shape your analysis, and you should be fine. There you have it, you learned all about market equilibrium. If you like my content, please consider subscribing and liking this video. If you have any questions or comments, write them below and I'll be happy to reply. See you next time. Until then, have fun and keep learning. By the way, we're going to Unit 2 next time, so definitely have fun and keep learning.